familiar with.
It's clear that there's been a concerted effort to cover up information, to distract, and to deceive the American people, and indeed the people of the world, as to what happened at the Pentagon on September 11th. With this in mind, is it not possible that those behind this conspiracy could have removed evidence that would have challenged the official story? And is it not inconceivable that evidence could have been planted to support the official story?
I know from my experience that it would have been highly improbable that even a seasoned American test pilot, a military test pilot, could have flown a T-category aircraft like the 757 into the first floor of the Pentagon because of a thing called ground effect.
The official trajectory has this plane just skimming the ground at about 500 miles an hour as it impacts with the building on the ground floor. That turns out to be aerodynamically impossible. Even a small plane, such as a Cessna at full throttle, would accumulate a packet of compressed gas, which is there beneath the fuselage, that would make it impossible for it to get closer than 15 feet to the ground. Discussions with aeronautical engineers have convinced me that for a Boeing 757 at 500 miles an hour, it could not get closer than 60 feet to the ground. If the plane had been taking the official trajectory, its engines would have been making massive damage to the lawn. Wake turbulence would have been wrecking it. The lawn would have been a mess. Instead, the lawn is perfectly smooth, green and smooth, which turns out to be, ironically, a smoking gun at the Pentagon.
Ground effect and the pristine condition of the lawn in front of the Pentagon aren't the only problems with the official story. The airline pilots that we talked with also have a very serious problem as to whether or not terrorists that were trained on small aircraft were even capable of maneuvering a large commercial airliner at such a high speed and making these very precise maneuvers.
I flew the two actual aircraft which were involved in 9/11, the flight number 175 and flight 93, the 757 that allegedly went down at Shanksville, and flight 175 is the aircraft that's alleged to have hit the South Tower. I don't believe it's possible for, like I said, for a terrorist, a so-called terrorist, to train on a 172, then jump in the cockpit of a 757, 767 glass cockpit, and vertical navigate the aircraft, lateral navigate the aircraft, and fly the airplane at speeds exceeding its design limit speed by well over 100 knots, make high-speed, high-bank turns, pulling probably 5, 6, 7 Gs, and the aircraft would literally fall out of the sky. I couldn't do it, and I'm absolutely positive they couldn't do it.
What's unusual about the 5 frames that the Pentagon released is they don't show a plane streaking across the Pentagon lawn. They just show a white vapor trail. The date and the time on the Pentagon frames is wrong. You know, at one of the most secure buildings in the world, and at the bottom of these 5 frames they have the word plane. It's like subliminal. You know, the word is there, but the plane isn't.
The Pentagon is the nerve center of the U.S. military. When it comes to U.S. security, all roads lead to the Pentagon. Surveillance would obviously be the first step in maintaining safety and security. Take a look at your local Walmart and count the closed-circuit video cameras surveilling the parking lot. Video cameras can be seen everywhere in our society. Are we to believe that the world's most secure building was only capable of capturing the event on video from 2 cameras at one location?
They took over the flight themselves and downed the plane in a field.
I want to get quickly to Chris Kanicki. He's a photographer with the Pittsburgh affiliate of Fox affiliate. He was back there just a couple of minutes ago, and Chris, I've seen the pictures. It looks like there's nothing there except for a hole in the ground.
Basically, that's right. The only thing you could see from where we were was a big gouge in the earth and some broken trees. We could see some people walking around in the area, but from where we could see, there wasn't much left.
Any large pieces of debris at all?
No, there was nothing that you could distinguish that a plane had crashed there.
Smoke, fire?
Nothing. It was absolutely quiet. It was actually very quiet. Nothing going on down there, no smoke, no fire. Just a couple of people walking around. They look like part of the NTSB crew walking around looking at the pieces.
How big would you say that hole was?
From my estimates, I would guess it was probably about 20 to 15 feet.
In Shanksville, one of the things that's really remarkable is the Associated Press said that all the wreckage that was recovered from the whole scene could fit in the back of a single pickup truck and a few plastic bags. Now, there's just no way a big plane like that just completely disintegrates or reduces itself down to practically nothing.
The debris here is spread over a 3 to 4 mile radius, which has now been completely sealed off and is being treated, according to the FBI, as a crime scene. That's really all you see is a large crater in the ground and just tiny, tiny bits of debris. There has been at least one report that the investigators out there, and there are hundreds of them, as I said tonight, have found nothing larger than a phone book.
There are lots of oddities about Flight 93. As Colonel Nelson has observed to me, it looked to him as though a bulldozer had been taken, a ditch had been dug that had been filled with trash and blown up. I had residents of the area call me to say that they told the FBI they heard an explosion in the air before they heard any impact with the ground, but the FBI refused to write it down. I have other residents of the area write me and explain to me they were taken to a search area far larger than the officially designated crash zone to look for body parts and aircraft debris, but told by the deputy sheriffs taking them that they would deny it if they mentioned this to anyone. I have a former Inspector General for the Air Force responsible for the conduct of air crash investigations tell me that if the plane had crashed as advertised, the debris should have been scattered over an area approximately 1 city block in size. In fact, it's distributed over 8 square miles, which is a scenario consistent with the plane having been shot down in the air, but not one that crashed.
Morning, Cleveland, United 93 is with you at 350, intermittent light stop. United 93 checking in 350.
United 93, 350, roger. United 93, that traffic for you is 1 o'clock, 12 miles eastbound 370.
Well, I would definitely say after having looked at some of this video footage that I would have to remove myself from the, quote, believer category, and I can't say that I would be a dyed-in-the-wool skeptic, but there's enough information presented to cast some real doubt on the story as it's been presented, and with a lot of questions coming into my mind related to that. The Pentagon, along with Building 7 at the Trade Center, those two things are the biggest question marks in this whole scenario. I never realized that there was no evidence, if you will, of the tail section hitting the building in the Pentagon, or even of the engines. And all I've ever seen, like most of the general public, is a blurry image of purportedly to be a plane taken by a security camera hitting the side of the building, but so blurry that you can't really see what's going on. So yes, I would say, based on the photos I just saw, yes, I would have some real serious doubts and questions about the Pentagon story. There's a lot of information that's been manipulated and that we haven't been shown as a general public.
Caution, you are about to enter the no-spin zone.
Why did you have to tell him you were an atheist if you didn't have any trouble reading the oath? Why didn't you just shut up? What Jimmy Carter should do is privately give Mr. Bush's opinion and shut up publicly. That would be best for the country. And it is our duty as loyal Americans to shut up once the fighting begins. Me. Let's go. Okay. Thank you, Jamie.
I'm doing yes.
Good night. Thank you, Jamie. Don't take a cheap little pathetic shot. I'm telling you that's you're taking a cheap little pathetic shot.
On May 17th of 2006, the Pentagon announced that at 1 p.m. that day they would release new footage that they claimed would clearly show Flight 77 hitting the Pentagon. In anticipation to the release of this new footage, Kyra Phillips on CNN interviewed Jamie McIntyre, who is the CNN senior Pentagon correspondent. During this interview, Kyra Phillips asked Jamie McIntyre what his thoughts were on some of the ideas that something other than Flight 77 had hit the Pentagon.
Having been there on September 11th, having seen the plane wreckage and photographed it myself personally, I can tell you that that's nonsense. I had a camera with me. I took pictures of some of the wreckage, some of the parts of the fuselage, a part of the cockpit, until they told us we had to move back away from the scene.
After hearing Jamie McIntyre's statements with Kyra Phillips in this interview, we couldn't help but realize that they were inconsistent with his original live report at the Pentagon on September 11th. Let's take a look and listen carefully to what he said on that day.
From my close-up inspection, there's no evidence of a plane having crashed anywhere near the Pentagon. The only site is the actual site of the building that's crashed in, and as I said, the only pieces left that you can see are small enough that you could pick up in your hand. There are no large tail sections, wing sections, a fuselage, nothing like that anywhere around, which would indicate that the entire plane crashed into the side of the Pentagon.
After realizing the blatant contradiction of Jamie McIntyre's statements on September 11th and the statements that he had made on Kyra Phillips' interview, we decided to put out a news release on May 18th. In this news release, we quoted Jamie McIntyre's statement on September 11th and the statements that he had made on Kyra Phillips' news broadcast. As a result, I received a phone call from CNN's Headline News. I was invited to be a guest on the Glenn Beck program, which is aired daily on that channel. They had asked me to come on the program to discuss some of the controversies and conspiracy theories about what had happened at the Pentagon on September 11th. Now, realizing that despite the fact that they were very friendly and professional on the telephone, this was not going to be a very friendly interview. Let's take a look at this interview, and you decide whether this is journalism or propaganda.
Conspiracy theories, sure, they're fun. They help us keep that dream alive that someday we really will walk on the moon, and that next Christmas your stocking could be stuffed with an Elvis comeback album. Actually, some aren't so fun. Ever since 9/11, a bunch of theorists, otherwise known as people with active imaginations, no common sense, and a lot of time on their hands, have insisted that explosives inside the World Trade Center brought the towers down, that all the victims in the first plane really didn't die because there were no passengers, and that no plane ever hit the Pentagon.
Ask yourself this question. Does this sound like an introduction for an investigative piece of journalism with an honest desire to get to the truth? Or does this sound more like an ad hominem hit piece with a design to discredit and ridicule the messenger rather than address the issues and the evidence presented?
There's a documentary you can't get off of you can get off of a website, but for some reason they're not letting you buy it at Blockbuster, and now available is a director's cut that insists all of it is a hoax. Dave Von Kleist, you produced it. Tell me, sir, how is this not a plane? Right there. Can we freeze that and show that box? How's that not a plane? That's a big white object of some sort. That's right. It's either a plane or a naked Michael Moore headed for the buffet.
Glenn Beck, you're absolutely right, and you've just proven my point. This photograph does show something. It's either a plane or a naked Michael Moore heading for the buffet table, but it could also be an A-3 Sky Warrior jet or a Global Hawk missile. The fact is, this photograph shows something, but it proves nothing. And yet, Jamie McIntyre on CNN yesterday stated that he had photographed pieces of the cockpit and the fuselage, and Jamie McIntyre also stated on September 11th that upon his close inspection, there were no pieces of recognizable wreckage from any type of a large aircraft. He stated that there was no fuselage, there were no wings, no engines, nothing that you could recognize as a large aircraft.
What's in Area 51? Is it aliens or office supplies?
The desperate attempt to somehow link me to aliens, an Elvis comeback album, a two-nosed Osama, and Area 51 is nothing more than another example of how ridicule and